Rania's children were 13, 12, 11, 8, 6, and 1.5 years old at the time of the arrest. Their names are Dima, Intisar, Najah, Ala, Ahmed, and Layan.
Hello, my name is Stanley Heller. Welcome to The Struggle. We're going to start with a fascist rally in Jerusalem. The chants are so hateful that they're properly described as Nazi-like. Death to the Arabs is one of their mildest curses. Shuafat is on fire is the worst. It refers to 2014, when a teenager from Shuafat camp was burned alive by some of the Israelis. Another curse is referring to a shireen as a prostitute. It, of course, refers to the wonderful Shireen Abu Akleh, the reporter who was killed by IDF soldiers on May 11th. Now see what comes next. Consider what you just saw. One person waving a Palestinian flag, chanting "God is great," a traditional Muslim chant, hardly anything dangerous. But then this happened. The flag was ripped out of his hand, and then they went after him. Israel is going back to the 1980s when it was illegal to wave a Palestinian flag. Israeli cops couldn't stop this display of a Palestinian flag. It was in Jerusalem, overhead. A drone was pulling the flag. The same day this happened. So it starts with a fascist kicking an old woman and continues with another one spraying the woman with pepper spray. We correctly call Israel an apartheid state, but honestly I can't remember old apartheid South Africa allowing mobs to roam freely, demanding death to the blacks. Things are at a new horrible state in Israel. Some Jewish Israeli writers in Haaretz have written intensely critical articles about their country, articles that could not be printed in a mainstream U.S. paper. The online site Mondoweiss has an article about it. Distinguished columnist B. Michael, who used to write humorous articles and then sarcastic ones, has a piece called "It's Time for Us Jews to Go Back into Exile." In it, he talks about Israel as a small, arrogant, violent, wicked nation. Amira Haas, concluded her recent Haaretz article with these words: "Is there now in all the world's countries a single responsible adult who will say openly, 'The hell with it, this Jewish mutation that is developing there in the Middle East,' in other words, the state of Israel, has lost it, freaked out, lost its mind, gone crazy." That adult sure isn't Joe Biden. On May 19th, 57 members of his own political party asked the State Department to have the FBI do an investigation of the killing of Palestinian American Shireen Abu Akleh. It's been over 2 weeks, not even an answer. A tactic in answer to what Amir Haas called the March of Horrors in Jerusalem is the campaign Take Down the Israeli Flag. It's a Jewish effort started last year to insist that the Israeli flag be removed from synagogues and all Jewish spaces. To see what we're talking about, go to thestruggle.org. In the campaigns section, click on Take Down the Israeli Flag, and you'll get to this page. See the names of 150 people or so who have signed the statement. And if you're a Jew religiously, culturally, or in any other way, consider signing it yourself. Back to the Nakba Day March and Rally in New Haven, and sections of some of the talks given up near Yale.
Palestine will be free! How do you spell justice? BDS!
I want to say a couple things about the Intifada, the Nakba, because this is the memory, the memorial of the Nakba. Because in the Zionist propaganda, it's often said, oh, if the Palestinians had accepted the two states in 1947, it was a lie. Because if you read what the Zionists were saying from Ben-Gurion to all the people of that era, two-state was just the starting point because they wanted all of Palestine. And they took it. And they even wanted more. The party that's usually been in, Netanyahu's party, well, they used to sing a song about Israel being on both sides of the river. They're talking about the Jordan River. And they quite seriously wanted land on both sides. Last point about that, something you may not know, but there were a lot of bad people in those age, and it wasn't just Zionist Jews, because what was agreed upon with the King of Jordan was a collaboration, the Zionists and the King of Jordan, to take all that land, and Jordan would get East Jerusalem and West Bank and so on. So your ethnicity doesn't matter, it's your actions that matter.
I'm Evan, I'm a militant with Workers' Voice, a revolutionary socialist organization that has been organizing for the liberation of Palestine for the entirety of its period of colonization. And I want to say that as we mourn to the martyrs and victims of the Israeli occupation, which continues to grow every day, for me, the struggle in Palestine is also a struggle that's a global inspiration. We saw hundreds of thousands, if not millions, in the streets last year. There was a general strike in Palestine which inspired workers and oppressed people all over the world. 100,000 in Yemen, 200,000 in Iraq, 200,000 in London, thousands and thousands in Connecticut. I'm from Stanford. One of the most inspiring demonstrations demonstrations I've been to in my life was last summer. The Palestinian and his Muslim community came out. There was 500 people that took the streets for 2 hours and didn't lose energy for a single second. I've never seen anything like it in my life.
Land! 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 All right. Good job, guys. Woo!
The settler colonial state of Israel will administer sham legal proceedings, claiming the ancient right of Israelis to the land on which the homes of Palestinians are built. They then proceed to legally obligate Palestinians to demolish their own homes or suffer a huge monetary penalty otherwise. Many Palestinians will also lose their home to Israeli settlers who take their homes on their own volition. This week, during the funeral of the martyr Shireen Abu Akleh, Israelis stormed the home of one of the Palestinians attending the funeral of the Palestinian American journalist killed by the IDF. Not a few Israelis, but a busload of them.
We're in the middle of Yale Town. We're in the middle of one of the most oppressive institutions in the world. This weekend and next weekend, Yale students are graduating, and some of the students will go on to become imperialists, to become the people who vote to give billions to Israel, to become the people that shape the foreign policy of this country. So we're here taking this space to say that these are our streets. Whose streets?
Our streets!
Whose streets?
Our streets!
Here are a few still photos of the event in that part of the rally. On May 23rd, the legendary Carnegie Hall in New York and a score of musical artists held a benefit for Ukraine. This was the graphic, hearts in the colors of the Ukrainian flag. It was kind of cool seeing the colors reflected on the top of a piano. As you might imagine, the sound was magnificent and the program amazing, with highlights being musical superstars like Yitzhak Perlman, Cecile Slavnat, Chris Thiel, and the Russian-born pianist Yevgeny Kishin. Carnegie Hall seats 2,800 people, and I suspect every seat was full. And here are two people who attended in full political regalia. On a side issue, I took this photo of a photo on a Carnegie Hall wall of the great violinist and anti-Zionist Yehuda Menuhin. Though military news from Ukraine has not been good lately, take heart in this picture of the map of Ukraine. The area in yellow is land that Ukrainians have retaken. On June 2nd, Connecticut State Trooper Brian North had his second court appearance after being arrested for manslaughter in the death of Mubarak Soulemane. Someone had put signs of people shot dead by Connecticut police outside the court. The court session lasted only a few minutes. North's lawyer pleaded not guilty for him. Outside, the Soulemane family and their lawyers held a press conference.
No justice!
No peace!
What do we want?
Justice!
When do we want it?
Now!
What do we want?
Justice!
When do we want it?
Now!
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 Fire Brian North!
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 And fire Brian North.
We here today, my name is Civil Rights Leader Reverend Kevin McCall. We are here today joined by the family of Soulemane Mubarak, Attorney Sanford Rubenstein and Attorney Mark Aarons, along with the supporters and justice for Mubarak. We sat in the courtroom within the blinking of eye to hear a pre-trial date to be set on August the 2nd. Then the trial date to be September the 15th. We don't care what the dates are. What we care about is justice. We care about when we hear the judge say guilty. At this time you will hear from the mother who has been on the front lines for her son, who has stand the test of trials for her son, who went through a Mother's Day without her son, who went through a Memorial Day without her son, who will go through a summer without her son. Let us hear from the mother, Omo.
I want justice for my son, Mubarak Soulemane. Deserve justice. I want Brian North to be held accountable for killing my son. I want Brian North to go to jail for killing my son, for massacring my son. That's what justice is for. And I want a guilty verdict for Brian North for killing Mubarak Soulemane. That's what justice is for.
Near the end of the press conference, Brian North, escorted by his lawyers and what appeared to be 20 or so troopers or police, escorted him away. We begin with the last 15 seconds before this happened.
We hope that this case, this criminal prosecution of a state trooper, the first time in Connecticut in 17 years, will send a shockwave across the country to once and for all change policing culture so that shooting is not the first item on the list, it's the last resort. We have to start somewhere, and we think this is an important beginning.
Justice for Mubarak!
Justice for Mubarak!
Fire Brian North!
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 Hope he hears that in his sleep tonight.
We've been talking for some time about the Alabbasi family who disappeared in Syria in 2013. Now, from a forum organized by Promoting Enduring Peace, Naila Alabbasi, sister of Rania, who was disappeared along with all her kids and her husband and secretary and taken by Assad security forces.
Well, I'd like to thank Promoting Enduring Peace and Mr. Stanley in particular for putting this event together today to talk about my sister Rania Alabbasi and her family. And I'd like to thank everyone joining us as well. During Syria's 11 years of revolution, many stories of forced disappearances and those who were arbitrarily detained have emerged. However, the story of my sister is one of the most ominous. It began with Rania's husband, Abdurrahman Yassin, who was born on 1969, who was arrested by members of military who wore military uniforms from his home in the Dumar district of Damascus. On March 9, 2013, the next day, security forces returned to his home again, with him looting all the gold and money in the house, as well as seizing 3 cars, computers, mobile phones, along with the passports and documents proving their properties. The following day, March 11, 2013, security forces arrested Rania with her 6 children and her secretary, Majduleen Al-Qadi, who was born on 1984, who was in her house that day by chance. Rania's children were 13, 12, 11, 8, 6, and 1.5 years old at the time of the arrest. Their names are Dima, Intisar, Najah, Ala, Ahmed, and Layan. One of the men who stormed her home, along with a member of the security forces named Abu Kazim, had been a patient of Rania's at her own clinic. Even he was treated for free of charge. The reason for their arrest is still unknown. However, we believe that Abdurrahman may have been targeted because he had provided humanitarian assistance to people in need. Some of them have been related to Free Arm without his knowledge. The Syrian authority have not been provided any information to us, nor to other bodies such as the UN Working Group on Enforced or Involuntary Disappearances. The first news of them we have received 8 months after Rania's arrest, when one of the released detainees, who was also a doctor, told that one of the officers in the military security branch 215 mentioned Rania by name during the first 15 days of Rania's arrest, and that she could hear the voices of children crying with her. Later, we received the news that she was seen in military security branch 235, which is called Palestine branch, in 2014, along with her kids. The kids were then the kids were taken to orphanages. Rania, who was born in Damascus 1970, was a professional dentist specialized in periodontics. Rania was an example to me. She always encouraged me in my study. At the age of 15, Rania participated in national chess championship and was crowned champion for 10 consecutive years, joining regional chess tournament, winning the Arab Championship and ranking 5th in the East Asian Championship. She later gained an international rating from the International Chess Federation. Rania raised the profile of Syria and was honored by Bashar al-Assad, the older brother of Bashar al-Assad at that time. She was named as the best Syrian player ever. Our father was detained in 1980 when Rania was 10 years old, as arbitrary detention without any reason during the rule of Hafiz al-Assad, the father of Bashar al-Assad. Then he was released on 1993 because of incurable disease. When Rania was 23 years old. On 1995, Rania quit chess to travel to Saudi Arabia with my parents, which she worked in as a dentist for 13 years. She was very popular among her patients and her colleagues because she was energetic, honest, and very good in her job and successful. In spite, Rania was busy with her work and children. She was social, always make time for her relatives and friends. She was kind, generous, and always thinking in other, for everyone in needs help. All of my family were living in Saudi Arabia, but Rania decided to go back Syria to raise her kids in their home. She started her own clinic in Damascus before the start of the war. When the revolution began in 2011, the whole family had visa to leave Syria to Saudi Arabia. Even Rania's husband had valid residency there. We asked Rania to join us, but she refused to leave Syria. She told me, society needs me. I want to raise my kids in my home and to complete their education. She thought she and her family were safe, especially she did not participate in any political activities or belong to any oppositional party, or even she did not go to any demonstration. She was a busy doctor and a mother of 6 children. She had no time to do so. The 6 children had done nothing. Rania and her husband raised them with love and care. Their dreams was sending them to the best university and achieving the highest standard of education. The beautiful girls were full of life and energy. They liked to have fun with their friends, dancing, singing, acting, joining parties, dressing, visiting bars, practicing sport, achieving high scores in school. Dima, the oldest one, was very shy and sensitive. Intisar was very clever with strong personality. Najah was lovely and friendly girl. Ala was very beautiful, like an angel. I cannot forget the time of her delivery. I am the one who conducted the delivery for her and Ahmed as well. Ahmed also was the only boy Rania was have. He was very energetic. Layan, the youngest one, who was born in 2011 during the war. Actually, we don't have the time, the chance to see her. She was in Syria at that time. All of them were having social media account and their own laptop. They were able to communicate with their friends privately. Their parents gave.
Finally, this Twitter post, thinking ahead to a time when a fascist America would force teachers to be armed to defend their schools. She writes, if they arm teachers, trust me, that training will be a website where you click through mini lessons and get a little certificate after like 25 minutes, and we will be forced to do it in a staff meeting after school when we're already tired. And the DOE will say we're all fully trained. As a retired teacher, I'd say she hit the nail right on the head. That's our program for today. See you next week at this time. I'm Stanley Heller for The Struggle.